I'm happy to introduce Haryanti Stuart to you, who will be reading her poetry from her home in Sydney, Australia. We met, it must have been 96 in Canberra, and have been sometimes following each other's moves. So Haryanti spent some time in England, and I think she's moved many, many times. So I don't have much to say, except that I like her poetry, and I approached her to read because I think it's...
I just wrote a little bit as an introduction, and I'll read that out to you. And thanks, Daphne and Andrew. I joined Subud 50 years ago, and the latihan has been the underpinning of my life ever since. The various local, national and international roles I accepted were my way of saying thank you. It's been quite a journey. As a helper, I've been privy to the innermost thoughts and needs of so many women, and the various committee responsibilities have been funny, infuriating, challenging and extraordinary by turn, but I have always learnt so much. I feel privileged and blessed to have been a small cog in the wheel. And the friends, oh, the friends. Subud gives us the opportunity to become close to such a wide range of people from so many cultures, religions and experience. It widens our opportunity to get to know people outside our socio-economic background, whatever that may be. Born and educated in Australia, I've lived in 4 capital cities and 2 regional areas, and left the country to live in Wales when I was in my late 60s. Returning, I made the huge leap to living in a retirement village in Nosman. Now that was a challenge, a boarding school for the elderly. I have 6 children, 21 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren, each of whom have made my life richer. My poems, well, I call them my bits and pieces. They're mostly a record of everyday domestic life, family, walks, the countryside, friends, something observed, even a piece of furniture. Nothing grand, but sometimes they touch a chord. Now, the first one I wrote, I thought I'd read it first because many of you may have known Rosianna Cookson. She was extremely influential and did so much for Subud in her early days and later. And she lived nearby me when she moved to Canberra with Harlena. They shared a home. And I wrote this after a morning coffee with her, where she was there with her 4 favourite people in the world, including Amalia Jackson. Anyway, sorry. Pink tracksuit. There she sat, radiant in her rose pink tracksuit, surrounded by skeins of wool borrowed from the rainbow. The beanie she'd crocheted sat beside her, newly finished, ends all tidied, stripy, perky, cheeky as its maker. She was so alive, so totally with us, sipping coffee, munching on her favourite chocolate biscuits, laughing at some joke or other, mind as diamond sharp as ever. Then it was time to go. We hugged goodbye as usual, and she took out the tray to the kitchen and died, just like that. The chocolate biscuits scattered on the floor like stars, and we who loved her left behind couldn't help smiling through our tears while giving thanks for the privilege of knowing her. The next one is after a long, long drought in Canberra, and I wrote this one New Year's Eve. Drought break. Another New Year's Eve begins. Hot, dry, every living creature panting, every desiccated leaf blade crying dust tears. A stifling, death-defying evening like myriads before it. No relief from the days, weeks, months of heat. Then quietly, with no drama, the sky took pity and rained its blessings on the earth, caressing, stroking, gentling all beneath it. And in the morning, trees sang and grass hummed and flowers danced in sheer astonishment, while birds sang out their hallelujah chorus to a world washed clean. It was indeed a happy new year. I wrote this next one in Brecon in Wales, where I was there for quite a while, and I've called it History Repeats Itself. From half a world away, my daughter rang. She there in Australia, me here in Wales. I'm building a dry stone wall, she said, my first attempt. The children will want to run along it, so I'm building it low and strong, curving round my vegetable garden. It looks so good. Years ago, across the sea from here in Wales, back there in Australia, I built a long, low, curving dry stone wall, wide and strong. My children sped, arms outstretched for balance as they flew along its length. It was my first attempt, and it looked so good. Now she lives minutes from that home where she was born in far Australia, while I live here in Wales, remembering across the seas a different land that shaped us both, mother and daughter, impelled by Celtic forebears to build, each in our time, a dry stone wall. It feels so good. When I went to Wales, it was probably, well, it was the first time in my life I'd ever done anything just for myself, ever. So I discovered a contentment that I didn't know was possible, and I've called it this contentment. It's a new feeling, this recognition of content. Quiet, peaceful, punctuated now and then by bubbles of joy, occasionally by sadness, but always leavened by this deep, quiet gladness. Happiness is kin to contentment, but is more ephemeral, a response to the moment, a quickening of being not always long-lived. Happiness is the quick hug, but contentment the lingering embrace. Contentment has peace at its core, is the glue that keeps us firm within, is not easily bruised, is like a Schubert nocturne rather than Stravinsky strings, a blessing. This one, I was visiting my son, one of my sons in Germany, and as we stepped out of the train, he took me to the Christmas markets in Nuremberg, and I've called it Christkindl. Wondering, wide-eyed and happy as a child, I saw families strewn with stardust at the Nuremberg Christmas markets. Snow confetti crowns framed crinkly wet hair and furry collars in lamplight haven from the winter dark. Crystal ice flakes danced and swirled at the Nuremberg Christmas markets, and the little ones held out their hands and laughed, and adults too when they thought no one was looking. Wreathed in Christkindl smiles, I gloried in the magic, held glühwein in frozen fingertips, sipped slowly from its fire, watched toddlers cheered on carousels as they hugged their painted ponies, lost in child thoughts. Cantering to who knows where, they whirled and whirled in copycat snowflake dances to plangent kinder chimes, an enchanted winter dreaming as I walked one glorious evening at the Nuremberg Christmas markets. This, I think, is one that, well, mums especially, but dads too, but mums especially because we give birth, and it's called partings. So many little deaths, the first at birth. I ask, please don't cut the cord, not yet. Wait until the pulsing stops. This conduit is too intimate to sunder with so crude an instrument. Months later, suckling you before your weaning, Tears fall unbidden as I wrap layers of protection round my heart, holding tight this tender final offering of myself to yours. These are the first of many partings, first day at school, first sleepover, first time behind the wheel. Trivial in themselves, but each step to that wrenching day when child leaves home, a child no more. But under all the tears, such joy as you make your eager steps across bridges built solid with my love. As you grow older, so do I. Will I be ready to cross the bridge from this world's journey to the next, as I, in turn, part finally from you?
Hi, Haryanti. Hi, Haryanti. I thought maybe a moment of feedback. It's Harris. I'm sorry I joined your.
Yeah, I can see you. Thanks, Harris.
Yeah, I'm sorry I joined lately. I just wanted to say I really like that last poem. Of the poems that you've read so far, I really like that one. Especially the first part about the birth. It's kind of really intimate and it's really gutsy, and I think it's a really good poem. I really like that one.
Oh, thank you. The next one, when I was in Wales, I went to lots of poetry readings, but with Welsh poets. And in one of them wrote a poem about a school desk. I thought, oh, wow. I came home and wrote 2 poems about a cupboard, and I'll read you one. Found one cupboard, neither large nor small, carving just visible beneath the paint, covered in dust and old oiled rags, scarred, scratched, and long forgotten, needs a home. I hate neglect, am too familiar with its wounding legacy. Angrily I push and pull from darkened corner to the light, hose off the dust by paint remover, scour and scrape the 7 faded layers of chipped enamel. Reveal its carving, release the sticking drawers, coax rust from hinges, wax the thirsty timber till it glows. For years it carries patiently the weight of flowers, a morning cup of tea, a book, watch and glasses shed the night before, while solid drawers and doors close tight on children's offerings. A world away, it fits exactly in a kitchen alcove, holding favourite china, candlesticks, a vase, different treasures for a different time of and place, a simple cupboard, well loved, at home. One of my sons married a Norwegian girl and he lives in Norway. I went there quite a few times when I was in Wales, and this poem was written one evening. There was no snow, but there was hoarfrost, which I think is utterly magical. And I wrote this. Walking alone in the black-clad night, late and alone and silent, she passed through the lamp beam, stopped, gazed in wonder, then danced at the shower of firework fragments, danced all alone and silent. Spreading her arms, she twirled and whirled, lost in a moment of joy. On waking, she looked through the icicled window, alone, transfixed and silent. A white frosted world lay sparkling beneath her, eerily pale in the dawn. A line full of washing, children's toys left forgotten, a garden spade propped near a wall. The mundane made ethereal, enchanted, enthralled her as she stood there alone and silent. This next one, I now have a family of about 40, but this is when I had about half that. And I bedded 23 family members down in Canberra one Christmas. And I wrote this afterwards. Families are the most amazing, incredible, aggravating, wonderful things. The world in microcosm. The way everyone in them shares thoughts, feelings, little kindnesses, a smile, and the infuriating habits that lodge in the centre, the irritant in the pearl. But when all's said and done, it's the pearl that lasts, a lustrous continuum to smooth the spurs and round the corners, layer upon layer, till the whole is strong. This next one was written when I was at Congress in Australia. And of course, we're lucky at these congresses because all ages are there. And I was incredibly moved by some of the ages that were represented, and I've called this glimpses. 16 or thereabouts, poised on the cusp of innocence and knowledge. Such fleeting, poignant beauty in this girl, woman, girl, it almost breaks your heart. 40-something, a glowing maturity palpable in its power, confident, aware, sexy, knowing. With wisdom growing, she shines as she moves about her universe. 60's grace has nothing to do with artifice. It wells up from decades of being, from pain, suffering, and joy, to reach a serenity independent of the world's opinion. It's gloriously freeing, spiced now and then with a feisty zest for life's more precious offerings. At 80, near the end, a radiance. No other word will do. It almost hurts the eye and lasts till the final breath releases and another journey begins. When I lived in Brecon, I lived behind the town walls, which was quite an amazing thing to do. I had my little funny little house, the town walls, the river, and then behind the river, I could see the stained glass windows of Christ's College, which is, I think, the only great public school in Wales. There might be one more. And the Usk River with the mountain behind. So this poem I wrote about the Usk. Ancient the river as it flows and swirls, clear as light or darkly brown, all earth's nourishment suspended within its reaches. What tales you could tell if only water voices could be deciphered. Dot dash might translate as us code if we had the wit to understand. You are the companion of my days, the keeper of my nights, my dream inducer, my seducer. I hear your sighs and listen to your song and wonder if you sense the presence of another hemisphere in our new alliance. I enter your memory of battles and burials, market days and music, of trysts and treason, marriages and birth. I time travel on your boats and barges, the coracles of the mind, this river's wanderers. And yet, each water drop is new, is here and gone before the thought takes hold. This river has seen everything and nothing, remembers everything and nothing, holds everything and nothing, offers never-ending possibilities. I have two more, if that's not too many.
This is delightful. Keep going.
This is called Echoes because I was walking along. I had the most beautiful, beautiful woodland, 5 minutes walk away. And I was walking one day, of course, you've got a lot of snow in this because I'm Australian and snow just blew me away. But when I went on this walk this particular day, I heard a sound underneath my foot and it immediately reminded me of something else. It's called Echoes. She remembered that sound, the dry, sharp crackling underfoot of grass on limestone plains, bare to the untrained eye, beautiful to those who knew their treasures. But summer's heat turned green to brown, sucked moisture from the creeks, crisped leaves once moist, the sound of summer, of grasses bent and broken from the drought and dust, longing for the rain. A world away, ice crunched underfoot on mountain moors, an eerie northern countersong. Bare too, but beautiful with other treasures. Icicles draped like necklaces from mossy rocks, cobwebs crisped with frozen flakes, and pools topped for a while with glass-hard ice. The sound of winter, of grasses bent and broken from the weight of snow, longing for the sun. This one, it threw me for years, but I always used to get irritated when you go to a retail store and someone says, have a good day, as they're typing away. They don't look at you. They don't even know whether it's morning or night. This particular one will live with me for a long time. Have a good day, she says, as you fumble for the credit card, trolley laden for a family of 8, child in tow and one wish in mind, to get home, feed the baby, and lie horizontal for a few blessed moments. Have a good day, she says, when you dash in to buy new school books and it's already nearly supper time. Have a good day, mouthed with eyes focused on the cash register. She doesn't even know what time it is. One morning that haunts me still, the young woman ahead of me in the queue turns round, tells me quietly her husband backed their car over her toddler a couple of weeks ago, and he died. Soundlessly, I hold her, put my arms around her. She moves on, pays the checkout girl for her butter and milk, and as she moves away, have a good day follows in her wake. It will be a long time before that young mother has a good day.
Well, that was delightful, Haryanti. Really.
Well, thank you. I had
really.
I can thank Daphne for coaxing, bullying me, telling me I'll be with friends. Thank you.
Are you open to some discussion about your poem?
Sure, please.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued that you went to Wales after living in Australia for, I guess, most of your life. Is that correct?
Mm.
Now, why did you choose Wales? I mean, I know
I'm going to have
about
to
Wales.
try and shorten a stupidly long story, but the first time was I was divorced. I'd actually been married 3 times. I was divorced from my first husband, and he really never saw the kids. And I went to Wales to see a very, very close friend of mine in Australia who lived there at the time, Rahana Hutchings, and her husband, Lati. And Brecon, I went to Brecon. It was such a vibrant group then. There were about 60 and really interesting people. And Brecon, as I discovered later, it's got people from all over the world. It's beautiful. It has a spiritual feel to it. It's got sculptors, artists, writers, musicians. I could go on and on, you know. 900-year-old cathedral, a live theatre, canals, rivers, 2 of them. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, I'm going to move here and take my kids here and we'll start afresh. Anyway, for very complicated reasons to do with the fact that my father's birth was never registered, was too far in the past, I didn't go. The paperwork all fell through. I came back, thought things change, and I remarried. And then many, many years further on, when my third husband died, I was going to go to Germany to help my son and his daughter because they'd landed there with no German, brand new job, brand new child, breaking. And I was just going to go there. And one of my daughters said, Mum, you've got friends all over the world, take around the world ticket. So I did. And I went back to Brecon and thought, because when my husband died, it was like a blind came down. I loved Canberra. I really genuinely loved it. Although I hadn't wanted to move there, but I did love it. And I thought, oh God, where am I going to move to? I know I have to move. And I thought it'd be within Australia, but this breakaway I'd come back clearer. So I booked my ticket round the world, went to Brecon. 3 days before I leave for the Greek Zone conference, I just got this inner voice that I've learned I can't ignore, because it was the same one telling me in this mad way to move to Canberra. And I argued and argued, but got there. So I thought, I'll never move again without having that inner impelling. And I got it. It was moved to Brecon. This is where you have to be. I got there, not through the grandfather route, would mean I would have to work, but I got there through my divorced first husband's English mother. And going that route, I could study or not study, work or not study, do whatever the heck I liked. And I would say it was one of the most extraordinary 14 years of my life. I didn't mean to stay there 14. I meant to stay 5 or 6. But the world changed a bit. Lehman Brothers, exchange rate changed, all sorts of things. But I got back. And while I'll miss it forever, I made was the right thing to come back, and I'm glad I did. In a nutshell.
Well, thank you very much for explaining that. Does anybody else want to comment or ask a question of Haryanti?
I would, if I may.
Go ahead, Paris.
I liked a number of your poems, Haryanti. And in Subud voice, I don't know if you ever see Subud voice, but
I always read. I read it every month, Harris. Good on you.
Oh, our one reader. That's wonderful.
No, you've got more.
But anyway, we've been doing this thing of at the end having a poet, and I would really like you, to publish some of your poems. So I'll write you an email about it, and I'll mention the poems that particularly appeal to me. So thank you very much. It was really good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, well, I made it. I kept saying to myself, by tomorrow night, you'll have done it. Thank you. Thanks very much for all of you for just being there. And what I did to my kids, I told them, but I said, wait till it's on YouTube and you can watch it whenever you like, because 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning is taking kids to soccer or God knows what's a terrible time for families. So that they're happy about that. Hello, Latifa.
Latifa, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm doing that there. I did it. Oh, I really love the poems, every one of them, Haryanti. But the one about the river, behind your house in Wales, was so lovely. I liked it a lot. And it reminded me of walking along that river with you when I visited you there. And also walking in the woods remind me of that one about the walking in the woods in the winter time. So
it was lovely. I loved having you.
Brecon. I loved it there. It was lovely.
Yeah. Thanks, Latifa. I remember that very fondly, that visit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Latifa. Anybody else want to say something? Helga,
Yeah.
are you offering yourself?
I love them all, Haryanti, but the last one still has me reeling. It was gut-wrenching.
What do you do? All I could do was hold her. It was just, yeah.
But a lesson to all.
And I've written other funny ones and crazy ones, but I tried to pick something that had meanings to where I'd been and thought they might be the ones to share. I really just call them my bits and pieces. Very domestic. Well, thank you so much. It hasn't been as horrendous as I was frightened of it being. It was relatively all right. So thank you both.
So you say I bullied you, right? Okay. But it was...
Would any of you like to hear a poem by an Australian poet, which,
oh, yeah.
when I reread it, having had the latihan, I kind of felt it totally differently. it's not mine. I don't know if any of you have heard of Judith Wright, but she wrote in Australia in the 40s up to the late 60s. She was a formative voice in Australia in poetry and a staunch protagonist for Aborigines. But the one I'd like to share is called Birds. And there's something about it I really love. Whatever the bird is perfect in the bird. Weapon kestrel hard as a blade's curve. Thrush round as a mother on a full drop of water. Fruit green parrot wise in his shrieking swerve. All are what a bird is and do not reach beyond bird. Whatever the bird does is right for the bird to do. Cruel kestrel dividing in his hunger the sky. Thrush in the trembling dew beginning to sing. Parrot clinging and quarrelling and veiling his queer eye. All these are as birds are, and good for birds to do. But I am torn and beleaguered by my own people. The blood that feeds my heart is the blood they gave me. And my heart is the house where they gather and fight for dominion, all different, all with a wish and a will to save me, to turn me into the ways of other people. If I could leave their battleground for the forest of a bird, I could melt the past, the present and the future in one and find the words that lie behind all these languages. Then I could fuse my passions into one clear stone and be simple to myself as the bird is to the bird.
That's wonderful. Do you have any other poems you'd like to read that you've been looking at?
Oh, this is by Kenneth Slezzer. In my very worn Penguin Book of Modern Australian Verse, then in the year, then in 68, this particular one, that's a long time ago, and he was very well known in Australia. And he's called this one Sleep. Do you give yourself to me utterly, body and no body, flesh and no flesh, not as a fugitive, blindly or bitterly, but as a child might, with no other wish? Yes, utterly. Then I shall bear you down my estuary, carry you and ferry you to burial mysteriously, take you and receive you, consume you, engulf you. In the huge cave, my belly lave you, with huger waves continually. And you shall cling and clamber there and slumber there in that dumb chamber. Beat with my blood's beat, hear with my heart move. Oh, hear my heart move, blindly in bones that ride above you. Delve in my flesh, dissolved and bedded through viewless vowels embodied so, till daylight, the expulsion and awakening, the riving and the driving forth, life with remorseless forceps beckoning, pangs and betrayal of harsh birth.
That's an incredibly powerful poem. Oh my gosh. Well, Susilawati, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Haryanti. I remember Rosianna Saura Cookson, and this felt like something that was, you were there, and she went into the kitchen and died. That's just how it happened.
Amalia went home, and then Helena always used to walk me to my car, and you know, just to the drive. She walked me to my car, And when I got home, she rang me and she said, Harlena died. And I came straight back. And while I was walking to the car with Harlena, 50 meters or something, she'd come back and Rosianna she was so with us. It's incredible. She picked up to the tray of the chocolate biscuits and probably a few cups and saucers and walked to the kitchen and died and dropped the tray, and the remaining chocolate biscuits just scattered all around her. And she was in her 90s, and she and Harlena lived each in their own part of a fourplex in Chalandak for years. And I discovered looking her up that she did quite some amazing things in Australia too, so it's worth Googling her. But anyway, Harlena had never had to look after her mum, and she said, I don't want to move without Rosianna. And they got here under extraordinary circumstances. I mean, every rule in the book was broken, not, by whatever. They managed to get here. And they shared a house. So Harlena had lived with me for 4 months first, so I got to know her very, very well. Oh, that was great. And then they moved nearby and they lived nearby, and that's what happened. And she really wanted to go. She was in her 90s. She said, I want to go. I'm ready to go. So we were laughing. I got back there and we were laughing. And then there was a policewoman in the kitchen, and Harlena and a guy going, oh, better be quiet. Not supposed to laugh. She might think we had something to do with it. But of course we miss her, but it was so lovely. What a perfect way to go. The Canberra lot had been crocheting beanies to raise money for their Subud house. And she just got this last one, in the basket beside her. And, she was great. I loved her. Love both of them. Harlena's not that well, though, you probably know.
Another one of your poems, it made me feel so dry, and then the relief came when the rain came. And I thought that was very, very well done. And also I loved the dry stand wall, that wall story. And
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you.
The adults who laughed when no one was looking. I wonder where we learned that. Yeah. Of course, the river poem was fabulous. And I remember having, of course.
That river was, I was only 20 meters from it. It was just behind what had been the town wall. And I saw it when it had wildflowers growing up from it because it was so low. I saw the rowers from the school opposite go along it. There was a resident heron that was always standing on one rock, and he was an old heron. And old herons have these feathers that go down their neck. And there was one lone heron when the river wasn't too high, always sitting on one rock looking for fish. There were 3 white swans that every now and again would glide past, surveying their territory. There were deaths too. There were some sad things that happened on that river. But I said hello to it in the morning, good night to it at night, and I'd go out to read a book and I'd stare at the river. It was extraordinary living there. I never saw anything ugly, not ever anywhere. And as I said, there were writers, sculptors, poets. In the bookshop round the corner, they would hold jazz trio evenings, and the cinema had art house movie club once a month. And the theatre put on the most extraordinary productions. Productions from National Wealth Theatre from the UK. It was so rich at every possible level living there. Yeah.
I value so much listening to this.
Oh, thank you.
How about the Lydia? Did you want to say anything? No, you're still muted.
You see, it says mute when it's unmuted. It says it's unmuted when it's mute. So I can't get my head around it. I apologize. Anyway, I liked a lot of different things in your writing, and how you connect to what places you've been was something that I found intriguing, because I think place, one's physical location, is very important to what poetry comes out. And so the fact that you had experienced so many, such a contrast between Australia and Wales, I mean, I can't even imagine. And then to find a place in Wales so rich in every form of culture, I think that's really fantastic. You said something that grabbed me very early on about something like a hug was happiness, but there was something else, a lingering embrace was contentment. And I just love that. So thank you very much for that little thing. Little jewels here and there, they just glimmer, and we catch them or we don't, you know, but I just happened to catch that one. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
I will unmute.
Nice to have you make those comments. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Would anybody like to say something? I would like to say I too, as Cecilia Wadi did, enjoyed the poem about the dry stone wall. As a Scot, I've built quite a few walls. There's something about piling stones and making sure they're snug and they fit together. I hadn't thought about trying to walk on the top, but yeah, I think they're one of my most satisfying accomplishments.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I kind of loved the fact that my daughter was building it close to the home that she used to, you know, was born in virtually. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you like dry stone walls. They're wonderful.
Yeah. So before we go, Haryanti, do you want to say anything to close it off for everybody? Do you have any feelings?
Well, I'd really just like to thank you all. It's been a real experience for me, and you've all made it easy. I mean, I never think of my poems as poetry. I mean, I know a fair bit about good poetry when I hear it, but it's kind of not what I do. I just respond to the moment. I'm not trying to do anything more formal, but I miss so much of Brecon, because, you know, we had a poetry group where we had two poetry groups, one where you wrote your own, and the other we'd meet in someone's home. We'd choose a poem or a place and all bring something to do with that poet or place. Then we'd have food and wine. And one night I did it in my home, and I chose modern Iranian poetry and old Persian poetry. And some of the modern stuff, especially by women caught up in war, it just throws you. It's just extraordinary poetry. And some of the old Persian poetry it's just wonderful stuff. And then I put on a Middle Eastern meal. I couldn't do it Persian particularly, but that whole experience each month was just so extraordinary, you know. And at the cathedral, Latifa absolutely adored it. It's small, but one of the most beautiful ones I've ever seen. And they had symphony orchestra 4 times a year. Because I knew this particular lot of people who were into the poetry, they asked me to be their publicity officer. And I said, look, I have a good ear, but I have no knowledge. Doesn't matter. They said, you can research. So I ended up being the publicity officer for the Brecknock Sinfonia, and put a little piece in the local paper beforehand. And then at interval, we'd sell wine. And at the end of it, the friends would have brought food, and we'd serve it to all the orchestra members. And we got to, over the years I was there, we got to know the orchestra members so well. And then you'd have fundraising events in some of Wales' beautiful old homes or bookshops or whatever. And it was such a rich experience. And I don't regret coming back. I would have been so wrong not to. I mean, it's been rich in totally other ways, being with my family, who have been just so lovely to me. I can't tell you. But I guess I learned a little bit about who I was for the first time in my life. You know, it was nice. And that sort of carries me through a little bit. Yeah, I don't know what else to say really, except, you know, I'm so grateful for Baba and the latihan. I used to be one of those people who wish I had these incredible experiences, but my last husband had a bilateral stroke, and the mouse that was me turned into a very fearless being, having to battle for him through various governments. The governments were trying to change, the governments were trying to get younger people out of nursing homes into better accommodation. What it ended up being was 7 years of lies, manipulation, God knows what. The number of carers went from 16 to 4, and we 4 with the advocate. We had 2 health ministers want to help us, and both lost their jobs. We finally had a 3rd. We had Rosemary Follett. We had a reconciliation meeting, didn't go anywhere. So we had the case taken to court, and we won, and we changed the philosophy of care for disabled people in the ACT. So I've had kind of all sorts of varied experiences. And I vowed I'd go to Wales and I wouldn't do any more, but I did. Everyone kept asking me to do this, do that, save this, save that. Then I come to this crazy independent living, which was not on my radar. And it's been a challenge of another kind. Yeah. But I've got family here and they're great.
And we love hearing you laugh.
Thanks. Better to laugh.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good note to end, a laugh.
Well, thank you for sharing with us. This has been very profound and enriching for all of us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Really.
Thank you. I miss the intellectual side of life here. I mean, so this has been really good for me. Thank you.
So how about you do something like the Persian thing? And maybe if you're not reading all of it, I mean, we could have people come in and share in the reading, but you pick points.
I've got everything.
I'd love that.
Somewhere I've got all the poems I picked out.
No hurry, but it would be
I'll
nice.
think about that. Thanks.
I'll bully you some more with that one.
That's a roll.
I'd like to encourage
Thanks,
you,
Andrew. I know you do so much behind the scenes.
I'd like to encourage you, Haryanti, because this Zoom technology is wonderful. Here we are connected from Canada to you people in Australia, you know, and how wonderful that ordinary people have access to this sort of technology where we can share and hear each other and see. And yeah, the only limits really are our imagination in terms of the programming. So some of the evenings that you had with your poetry group could easily be created through this technology, and people could access it in their living room.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could share it with Subud people from around the world, I'm sure. Anyway, please think about it. We'd love to have you involved in doing ZoomMuse events with the rest of us.
I'll be in touch with Daphne. Thank you.
Thank you
very much, all of you, and for all that you said. Thank you. Mwah.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Great evening for the rest of us.